The call came at 7:43 in the morning. I was still in my car, parked outside the office, finishing coffee I had made at home. Not since my last raise got pushed back. Again, could I afford the cafe downstairs? Nadia. It was Mr. Fowler. His voice had that flat, controlled tone I had learned to distrust. Conference room B. 8 o'clock. Do not be late. He hung up before I could respond. My reflection looked back at me from the black phone screen. 36 years old, senior account manager, 12 years at Corvel Solutions. I had given this place my best years. The lobby was already busy. People rushing to desks, typing before they had taken off their coats. I took the elevator, straightened my blazer in the mirrored doors, and told myself it was probably nothing. It was not nothing. When I pushed open the glass door of conference room B, Mr. Fowler was already seated. So was our head of legal, Ms. Addo. And at the far end of the table, arms folded, sat the CEO, Mr. Crane. Nobody smiled. Mr. Crane looked up from his phone and said, "Close the door, Nadia." I had been with Corvel Solutions since I was 24 years old. I joined as a junior coordinator, answering phones and filing contract documents nobody else wanted to touch. Over the first 3 years, I covered for team leaders who took long lunches, organized presentations that managers took credit for, and stayed past 9 on Fridays when deals were falling apart. My direct manager at the time, Mr. Osei, used to say, "Nadia, you work like you own this place." He meant it as a compliment. What I did not understand then was that working like you own a place and actually owning it are two very different things. Mr. Osei retired in my 5th year. His replacement barely knew my name for 6 months. But the clients knew me. That was the part nobody could take away. Especially one client, a firm called Brent Harlow, handling commercial property development across 3 regions. I had managed their account since the beginning. Their lead contact, Mr. Adeyemi, had called me personally once when a competitor tried to pull his business away. "I stay because of you," he told me. I smiled and filed that conversation away in my mind. That sentence would matter far more than I knew. The Brent and Harlow account almost collapsed 3 years before that conference room meeting. A scheduling error, not mine, caused a delay in the contract renewal. Documents were filed a week late. The client was furious. A late renewal triggered a penalty clause worth £40,000. By the time Mr. Fowler called an emergency meeting, everyone was looking at me. I was the account manager. I carried the relationship. So I worked the problem instead of defending myself. I called Mr. Adeyemi directly, took full ownership of the communication failure, and offered a revised service package to cover their loss. I worked 3 evenings straight restructuring the contract. Mr. Adeyemi signed the renewed agreement within 2 weeks. He even sent a letter praising the handling of the situation. Mr. Fowler forwarded that letter to the executive board with a summary at the top describing how the leadership team had resolved the crisis. My name appeared once in the body. His name appeared 4 times in the summary. I filed that letter in my personal folder. Not because I planned to use it. Just because I knew, even then, that the truth had a way of getting buried. And that buried things sometimes needed to be found. Mr. Crane had been CEO of Corvel Solutions for 2 years when that conference room meeting happened. Before him, the company was steady but slow. He arrived with new investors and a clear message: growth at all costs. He dressed sharp, spoke well in boardrooms, and used sports metaphors in staff meetings that made everyone feel like we were in a film about a winning team. Most people liked him immediately. I watched him carefully. Within his first year, he reorganized 3 departments, cut 2 senior roles, and promoted younger staff who had not been around long enough to question his decisions. He was charming in public and impatient in private. I saw this clearly the first time he attended a client review I was running. I had prepared detailed notes, projected revenue figures, and a risk summary. He walked in 12 minutes late, scanned my slides in under a minute, and spent the rest of the session discussing expansion plans unrelated to the client's concerns. Afterward, he said my presentation was too cautious. "Understood," I said. I made a note in my personal file. The client called me the next morning. "Is everything all right over there?" he asked. I told him everything was fine. I believed that less and less with every passing week. 6 months before the conference room meeting, Mr. Crane pushed through the biggest deal Corvel had seen in years. A new logistics firm, Paxton Group, signed a 3-year service agreement worth close to £400,000. The board was thrilled. Mr. Crane held a company-wide meeting while applause ran for almost a minute. He named 3 people responsible for the deal. I was not one of them. That was manageable. I had not worked the Paxton account. What bothered me came 2 weeks later, when Mr. Crane pointed to two junior executives as the model for how things should be done going forward. Both had sat in on my client review sessions 6 months earlier, taking notes. I mentioned this to nobody, but something shifted after that. Mr. Crane started leaving me out of meetings I previously attended. Not dramatically. A planning session here, a briefing there. Small exclusions that meant nothing individually. Meanwhile, Mr. Adeyemi from Brent Harlow kept requesting me personally for every call. "I want Nadia on the line," he would tell our scheduling team. That request had always felt like a compliment. Now it was beginning to feel like a target. The public embarrassment happened 4 months before the conference room meeting. It was a quarterly strategy session. All senior managers and 2 board observers present. When Mr. Crane opened the floor for questions, I raised my hand. The projected retention figures for my region were off by nearly 18% compared to actual performance data. I stated the discrepancy calmly and asked how the model had accounted for it. Mr. Crane looked at me for a moment. Then he smiled. "Nadia, I appreciate the detail focus, but let's not get lost in the weeds during a strategy session." People shifted in their seats around me. "The weeds are often where the problems live," I said quietly. "Let's take data questions offline." He moved on immediately. I did not speak again for the rest of the meeting. Afterward, one of the board observers, a quiet woman named Ms. Boateng, held my gaze a second longer than necessary as she gathered her papers. I did not know what that meant at the time. What I did know was this. Mr. Ease, one of the newer managers, leaned toward me in the corridor and said very quietly, "I saw what happened." That was not right. I nodded and kept walking. I was already thinking about what came next. It started with an invoice number that did not match. I would not have noticed at all if I had not been preparing Brent and Harlow's renewal documentation that week. I was cross-referencing 18 months of invoices. The contract value was significant, £280,000 over 3 years. When I pulled invoice CR 2047, the billing date was March. The internal approval signature showed April. Alone, that meant little. Systems lag. People sign things late. I flagged it in my notes. Then I went back further. CR 2031, same issue. Billing preceded the sign-off by 11 days. CR 1998, an approval record listing a service tier Brent and Harlow had never requested. I spent 2 evenings going back through a full year of records. I found 7 instances where billing and approval timelines did not align. In 3 cases, service codes billed did not match the contracted service level at all. I printed every document and dated my notes carefully. I did not report anything yet. Raising concerns without solid evidence only makes you look difficult. I needed to understand what I was looking at, and I needed to be completely ready. I want to be honest. There were moments I thought about fighting back sooner. When my name disappeared from the Paxton presentation, I nearly walked straight into Mr. Crane's office and asked for an explanation. When he dismissed my question in the strategy session, I nearly sent a formal complaint to the board. I did neither. Not because I was weak. I had seen what happened to people who went loud without being prepared. A contracts analyst named Mr. Brathwaite had raised a billing concern 2 years earlier, sent a strongly worded email to 6 people. Within 3 months, he was restructured out of his role. He was not wrong. He was just not ready. I refused to make the same mistake. So I kept coming in on time, doing my work thoroughly, and saying very little. When junior staff came with questions, I helped them. When a colleague needed cover during a family emergency, I took her client calls for a week without being asked. Mr. Crane saw this as compliance, as quiet acceptance. He said it plainly once, speaking to his assistant within earshot of the corridor. "Nadia's not a problem. She's too loyal to push back." He believed that completely. That belief was going to cost him everything. Mr. Ease came to find me 3 weeks before the conference room meeting. He knocked on my office glass just before noon on a Wednesday, carrying 2 cups of coffee. That told me the conversation would not be short. "I need to tell you something," he said, closing the door. "Hear me out before you decide what to do with it." Mr. Fowler had asked him to prepare a briefing note on the Brent and Harlow account. Not the renewal terms, but the history of the relationship. Specifically, any communication breakdowns or client complaints. He asked me to focus on negatives. Mr. Ease said, "What did you find?" I asked. "Nothing significant. Minor delays, all on the client side. Strong satisfaction scores. But one thing concerned me." He paused. "There is an internal risk classification for that account, and it has been changed. The original marked the client as low risk, high value. An updated version, I only found it because a draft was saved in the archive. Marks them as commercially marginal. Who changed it? He shook his head slowly. No author name. But the timestamp is 3 weeks ago. Someone had been preparing this for a while. And now I understood what they were building toward. That night I stayed in the office until nearly 10. My account management access gave me reach into the client archive. Access I had held for 12 years without anyone questioning, because nobody expected the quiet woman in the corner office to ever need it for anything beyond routine renewals. I built a timeline. I printed the original risk classification and the altered version. I pulled every approval signature on every Brent and Harlow invoice going back 3 years and matched them against the authorized signatory list for each period. I added the 7 billing discrepancies I had already found. Then I found one more. A service upgrade billed to Brent and Harlow in September, worth £11,000, had been signed off by Mr. Fowler. But the service tier it referenced was only available to clients enrolled in a premium program. Brent and Harlow had never enrolled. That was not a system error. That was a billing charge with no contractual basis. I labeled every document, created a clear index, placed everything into a sealed brown envelope, and put it in my bag. Then I went home and made dinner. I had everything I needed. I found out the full plan the Friday before the conference room meeting. Mr. E sent a short personal text. They're going to cancel the Brent and Harlow account. Emergency meeting Monday. You are being asked to deliver the news. I read that twice. Then I understood. If I walked into that meeting and told Mr. Adeyemi the contract was canceled, I became the face of the decision. Any fallout, any client complaint, any question about why a high-performing account was being dropped, all of it would trace back to me. And if the billing irregularities surfaced later, there would be a clear record of who managed the account, who attended the cancellation, and who signed the meeting summary. Not Mr. Crane. Not Mr. Fowler. Me. I had been set up. Not violently. Mr. Crane was arrogant enough that this may have felt like a practical business decision to him. Drop a complex client before year-end. Use the account manager to deliver the message. Keep the executive team clean. But I had spent weeks looking at the documents. I knew the real reason they wanted Brent and Harlow gone. A £280,000 renewal required a full audit of the past 3 years. That audit would be very uncomfortable for certain people. There is something I have never told anyone about how the Brent and Harlow relationship started. It was my 3rd year at Corvel. Mr. Adeyemi came through a referral, and he was not easy in the beginning. He was precise, demanding, and deeply suspicious of service contracts because a previous firm had burned him badly. In our first meeting, he handed me a 40-page breakdown of everything his previous supplier had done wrong and wanted to go through it line by line. I spent 6 hours with him that day. Other managers would have handed it to a junior. I sat with every concern and gave honest answers, including the times I had to say, "That is a fair point and I do not have a good answer yet, but I will find one." By the end of that meeting, he looked at me differently. "You did not try to sell me anything," he said. "Not today," I agreed. He laughed. The first time I had seen him laugh. 2 weeks later, he signed with us. Not because our pricing was the best, but because he trusted me personally and said so directly. For the next 9 years, he never asked to deal with anyone above me. He renewed without dispute, sent referrals, and trusted my numbers completely. He remembered everything I had done. I was about to find out exactly how much. Monday arrived the way bad mornings always do, too fast and too bright. I got in at 7:30. The floor was quiet. I checked that the sealed envelope was still in my bag. At 8, the calendar invitation arrived. Emergency client meeting, Brent and Harlow, conference room B, 10 a.m. All senior staff. Agenda, account review and strategic decision. That was the language of a cancellation. At 9, Mr. Fowler came to my desk and sat down, speaking low. "This morning's meeting, Mr. Crane wants you to lead the opening. You will inform the client that Corvel is restructuring its account portfolio and that Brent and Harlow no longer fits our service model." He slid a single sheet toward me. Talking points. The client will likely push back. Stay calm. Keep it brief. Legal is ready. I picked up the paper. Read it. Set it down. Understood, I said. He stood up, satisfied, and left my desk. He had no idea I had a sealed envelope in my bag, had documented 7 billing discrepancies, and had barely slept in 3 days. He thought he was walking away from a handled situation. He was not. By 9:45, conference room B was full. Mr. Crane at the head of the table. Mr. Fowler to his left. Ms. Addo from legal beside him. 3 senior managers along the wall. I was positioned at the far end, near the door, which felt deliberate. At 9:58, the Brent and Harlow delegation arrived. Mr. Adeyemi walked in first, dark suit, slim briefcase. Behind him came 2 members of his commercial team. And behind them, a woman I had never seen before. She carried a thick document folder and sat beside Mr. Adeyemi without introducing herself. She placed the folder on the table and folded her hands on top of it. Mr. Crane welcomed everyone warmly. He made small talk and spoke about long-standing partnerships, sounding completely in control. I watched Mr. Adeyemi's face the entire time. He was not listening to Mr. Crane. He was reading the room, the legal presence, the number of people seated, where I was positioned. When his eyes found mine, something passed between us. Not a signal, not a plan. Just a shared understanding that we had both arrived knowing something the other people in this room did not. I sat still. I waited. Mr. Crane nodded at me. That was my cue to stand and begin the cancellation speech. I picked up the sheet of talking points. I looked at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then I set it face down on the table. Before I begin, I said clearly, I want to allow our guests a chance to make opening remarks, as a matter of professional courtesy. Mr. Crane's expression shifted. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. Mr. Adeyemi said, "Thank you, Nadia." He placed his hands flat on the table. We did come prepared. He turned to the woman beside him. "This is Ms. Carty, our legal counsel." Ms. Carty nodded once. Before we proceed, Mr. Adeyemi said calmly, "Ms. Carty has one question she would like answered for the record." Mr. Fowler's pen stopped moving. Ms. Carty opened her folder, did not look down at it, and looked directly at Mr. Crane. "Can you confirm the authorizing signatory on service invoice CR 2047, dated the 3rd of March, and explain why the corresponding internal approval document is dated the 21st of April, 18 days after the billing was processed?" For seconds of silence. Then everything changed. Mr. Crane did not answer immediately. He reached for his water glass, took a slow sip, and set it down. In that small pause, the kind that tells you everything, I watched him understand that the room had shifted. Ms. Carty was still looking at him. "I would need to review the specific documentation before commenting on individual invoice details," he said smoothly. "That is not something I would have on hand at an account review." "Of course," Ms. Carty said pleasantly. "That is why we are requesting it formally." She placed a single page in the center of the table. "This is a documentation request under Clause 14.3 of the Master Service Agreement, entitling Brent and Harlow to full disclosure of all billing records and approvals within 21 days. She slid a second copy to Ms. Addo, who read the first 2 lines and looked at Mr. Fowler. Mr. Fowler was staring at the table. One of the board observers seated along the wall, a man named Mr. Okonkwo, leaned forward and picked up the request. He read it carefully. He placed it back down with a deliberateness that meant he had no intention of pretending he had not seen it. I reached into my bag. I placed the sealed envelope on the table. I did not open it yet. Ms. Addo spoke first. "Perhaps we should pause the meeting and allow relevant parties to review the documentation request before proceeding." "That seems appropriate," Mr. Okonkwo said from the wall. He was looking at Mr. Crane. "There is no need to pause. This is a routine account review." "Sir." Mr. Ease's voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned. He was holding a printed sheet, jaw tight. "I need to flag something formally." Mr. Crane's expression tightened. "Not now." "I think it needs to be now," Mr. Ease said quietly. "A client risk classification for Brent and Harlow was altered 3 weeks ago. The original document classified this client as low risk, high value. The updated version, carrying no author information, changed that to commercially marginal. I believe the alteration was made to support a predetermined decision to cancel this account." He set his copy on the table. The room was absolutely still. Mr. Fowler pushed back his chair very slightly, creating distance between himself and the table, between himself and everything on it. I watched Mr. Crane's hands. Flat on the table. Perfectly still. The kind of stillness that only comes when someone is working very hard to stay in control. He was no longer in control. Mr. Okonkwo stood up. He was a quiet man. I had seen him at board meetings and never heard him raise his voice. But the moment he rose, the room reorganized itself around him. "I am stopping this meeting," he said. "What I have heard in the past 10 minutes requires an immediate board response. That cannot happen here today." He looked at Ms. Addo. "I need full Brent and Harlow documentation, Billing records, approvals, service tier classifications, all internal correspondence, on my desk by end of business tomorrow. Ms. Addo nodded. He looked at Mr. Ease. Send me both versions of that risk classification document directly. Mr. Ease nodded. He looked at me. Nadia, is there something in that envelope? Every head in the room turned. Yes, I said. I have been documenting billing inconsistencies across the Brent and Harlow account for 3 weeks. 7 invoices with mismatched approval timelines. 3 instances of incorrect service tier billing. And 1 invoice, CR 2047, where a premium service charge was applied to an account never enrolled in that service program. I slid the envelope to Mr. Okonkwo. He took it without a word, placed it on the table, and said calmly to the room, "Right. Let us begin properly." Nobody moved for a moment. Then Mr. Crane said, "This is completely overblown." His voice was still controlled, but stretched thin. "These are administrative errors. Every company has paperwork inconsistencies. This does not need to become a board level." "It already is," Mr. Okonkwo said. He held the envelope without opening it. His expression was not angry. It was worse than angry. It was certain. "Mr. Crane, I am asking you to step out while I speak with our legal team and our client." Mr. Crane did not move for 3 full seconds. Then he stood, buttoned his jacket, and looked around the room once, quickly, as if counting faces and finding the numbers no longer in his favor. His gaze landed on me last. I met his eyes. I did not look away, and I did not look satisfied. I simply looked back. He walked out. Mr. Fowler followed without being asked. He did not look at anyone as he left. When the door closed, the room let out a collective breath. Mr. Adeyemi leaned back and briefly closed his eyes. Ms. Carty made a quiet note in her folder. Mr. Okonkwo set the envelope on the table, folded his hands over it, and looked at the room. "Right. Let us begin properly." That was the moment I knew it was over. The next 72 hours moved faster than I expected. Mr. Okonkwo's request triggered a formal internal review. By Tuesday afternoon, the board had appointed an external auditor to examine Brent and Harlow billing records going back 30 months. By Wednesday morning, the scope had expanded to include 2 other major accounts. Mr. Ease texted Wednesday evening, "It is bigger than we thought." The 7 billing discrepancies I had found were confirmed. 3 were classified as administrative error. 4 were classified as irregular billing, charges with no legitimate contractual basis. The total amount across multiple clients exceeded £63,000 over 2 years. None of it was accident. Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Fowler did not come to the office. By Thursday, his access card had been deactivated. I heard this from Ms. Amora, who heard it from someone in facilities. The executive team held closed meetings past 6 in the evening. People spoke quietly in the corridors and avoided eye contact with those they were uncertain about. I came in on time, did my work, and said very little. There was still one piece I did not understand. Why Mr. Adeyemi had arrived that Monday already prepared with a lawyer. Something had been communicated before the meeting. I would find out soon enough. Mr. Adeyemi asked to speak with me privately on Thursday afternoon. We met on the 5th floor, away from the executive offices. He brought 2 cups of tea, and how people bring something to their hands when they are about to say what matters. "I owe you an explanation," he said. 3 weeks before the conference room meeting, he had received an anonymous note through a general administrative address at his office. 1 page. No name. It contained 2 things. A copy of the altered risk classification, and a handwritten line. "Ask about CR 2047 before you sign anything." Someone inside Corvel had sent it. He had not come to me directly because he did not want to put me in a difficult position before knowing whether the concern was real. So he retained Ms. Carty, prepared the legal documentation request, and came to Monday's meeting ready to see what the room would reveal. "I want you to know," he said, "that I never believed you were part of it. In 9 years you have not given me a single reason to question your integrity." I did not cry. It was close. I asked if he knew who had sent the note. He reached into his jacket pocket and slid a folded sheet across the table. At the bottom of the anonymous note, in small, careful letters, was a single initial. B. Ms. Boateng. The quiet board observer who had held my gaze a second too long after the strategy session. The woman who watched Mr. Crane dismiss my figures in front of the room and made a careful note of it. I later learned she had flagged 2 previous concerns about financial controls, both quietly shelved. When she heard about the Brent and Harlow renewal and the internal pressure on the account, she pulled the records herself. She found the altered document, made a copy, and sent it to the person most likely to act, the client directly. She could not tell me. Not without risking her own position before the evidence was secured. But she had acted. Quietly. The way the right things sometimes get done. Mr. Crane's position became untenable by the end of that week. The board's review found his name on several irregular billing approvals. His assistant confirmed, when interviewed, that he had personally instructed the alteration of the risk classification document. He issued a statement through a solicitor claiming the matter had been mischaracterized. Nobody in the building believed him. By Friday of that week, his office was empty. The board had appointed an interim CEO while the full review continued. The corridors were very quiet that weekend. But a different kind of quiet, the kind that follows when something buried finally reaches the surface. 2 weeks after the conference room meeting, Mr. Adeyemi called my personal mobile. The fact that he had found the number told me this was not routine. "Nadia," he said, "I have a proposal. Hear it fully before you respond." Brent and Harlow was expanding. They were opening a commercial division requiring long-term strategic support, contract management, supplier relationships, compliance oversight. They had been looking for the right person to lead it for 18 months. "We did not advertise externally," he said, "because we did not believe we would find this person through a listing." He paused. "The role is yours if you want it." I stood at my kitchen window, looking down at the street. I thought about 12 years of early mornings and late evenings. About the Paxton presentation. About too cautious. About sealed envelopes and printed documents and staying quiet long enough to be ready. "What does the role involve?" I asked. He laughed, the same laugh from our very first meeting, 9 years earlier. "Building something properly," he said. "The way it should have been built from the start." I smiled. "When do I start?" I handed in my resignation on a Tuesday. I wrote it myself. Professional, brief, without bitterness. I thanked the company for 12 years, gave 4 weeks' notice as required, and signed it with my full name. Ms. Amara cried when I told her. She was the first person I told, which felt right. She had sat beside me through every unrewarded late evening, every quietly stolen credit, every meeting where I had held my tongue and simply kept going. "You never seemed angry," she said. "How are you not angry?" "I was," I told her honestly. "I just knew that anger without evidence is only noise. I needed the evidence first." The interim CEO, Ms. Danso, asked me to stay. I told her the decision was made. She shook my hand and said, "You handled everything with exceptional professionalism." I thanked her and meant it. On my last day, I cleared my desk. 12 years of work fit into one box. I chose to think of that as efficient rather than sad. Mr. Ease walked me to the lift and pressed the button. "You are going to be brilliant at whatever comes next," he said. I believed him. The doors opened. I stepped in and did not look back. It is now 7 months since that Monday morning meeting. I lead the Strategic Partnerships Division at Brent and Harlow. My team is small, for people, chosen because they're honest, thorough, and unafraid to say when something does not look right. We build trust into every agreement from the first conversation. We ask hard questions early and document everything. We believe clients deserve to understand exactly what they are paying for. Mr. Adeyemi checks in every 2 weeks. He never micromanages. He asks one question. "Is there anything I need to know?" I tell him the truth, and he always listens. Sometimes I think about Mr. Crane. Not with anger. That passed quickly. I think about what he misread. He looked at someone who stayed quiet and assumed she had nothing to say. He looked at someone who helped without asking for credit and decided she could be used. He looked at 12 years of patience and called it weakness. He was wrong about all of it. What people misunderstand about quiet integrity is that it is not passive. It is preparation. Every document filed carefully. Every honest answer given when a lie would have been easier. Every kindness extended without expecting anything in return. All of it is a record. And records, eventually, speak. I am Nadia. I spent 12 years being overlooked. That is done now.